Hi, everyone. It's Steve Politi from NJ Advanced Media. This week's Rutgers Rant is brought to you by the New Brunswick Development Corporation. A big thank you to our sponsor and to all of our listeners for the continued support. Now let's get to the show.
From NJ.com and the Star Ledger, welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights. With your host, Steve Politi, and Rutgers insiders Keith Sargent and James Cratch. Let's start shopping.
All right, hello, everybody. Steve Politi from NJ Advanced Media. Welcome back to the Rutgers Rant. A 31-13 loss to Michigan State to talk about. I'm with Cratch and Sarge, as always. Guys, I don't know what you think about this. I'm big picture here. I'm wondering, we've talked about what this team looks like, what's going to happen here in the future. Pat, you've talked about it a bunch about this team. Maybe last year's 3-10 wins were more of a mirage than anything with the COVID situation. I'm wondering, have we seen that now? Do you think what happened in these three games against Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State, lopsided games for the most part, is it indicative that this team just wasn't as far ahead as we thought? Or is this a case where the competition was really good, and here we are where we thought we would be with the schedule opening up? I mean, what do you think the big picture situation is with this team at six games?
I don't think it's necessarily that dramatic, because let's look at this. So they played 3 non-conference games. They swept them. They played Ohio State. I think we all expected them not to beat Ohio State. The Michigan game was just as competitive as it was a year ago for the most part. And in Michigan State, I think what we are kind of seeing with Michigan State is when Mel Tucker got the job last year, he got it after in 2020, so he did not get the head start that even Greg Schiano got when he was rehired, because Mark D'Antonio retired late. And then they had a pandemic hit. I think what you're seeing is there was a lot of talk going into this game about transfer portal. Well, that's true. Like, both schools have used transfer portal, but Mel Tucker had I looked back from 2016 to 2020, the recruiting classes. Michigan State's average recruiting ranking in the nation was like 32. Rutgers was like 58. So I think what we're seeing now is that now that Mel Tucker's had a full year in his program, he had a lot stronger foundation to build upon. So I think that's why we're seeing maybe he didn't get the reinforcements last season that he's now gotten this year. So I think last year was a strange year, but at the same time, too, I don't think that necessarily this team is any better off or worse off than it was a year ago. I just think the competition so far on the schedule has stepped up a little bit.
Sorry, I was muted. Micro started this, Sarge. I guess when we're looking at it, this is a defense that 600 yards almost, a 300-yard passer, a 200-yard receiver, a 200-yard running back, 4 plays of more than 60 yards. I guess I just thought this defense was going to be better. It looked better. I mean, it was better against Michigan. It was better against Syracuse. Can you give me a sense of, do you think this is an anomaly, or is this unit getting a little beat up and teams figuring it out? I mean, what's your broader picture on the defense?
Here's the biggest concern I have, and you could go back to a couple of weeks ago where we talked about how crucial this stretch was going to be. The biggest concern is just the injury, the toll that these games have taken, on the injury front, and we don't know the full scope. I mean, we think that Noah Vedral will play this week. He told us, in the post game that he's fine. But Bo Melton, that seems like it could be a longer term injury than maybe not the full season. But I'm not sure. I'm not optimistic myself that he'll be back this week. Aaron Crookshank went out. Christian Izzian went out. So all of a sudden, these injuries are taking a toll. You're seeing it on defense. They're playing a lot more younger guys, up and down the two deep guys with less experience. So all of a sudden, a unit that had 20 or 22 starters, back now, all of a sudden, the depth is being tested.
All right, offensively, Cratch, and this is kind of what I wrote about after the game. That I'm wondering if maybe teams have figured out Sean Gleason's scheme a little bit, if maybe we're starting to see that year with film on what they're trying to do here at Rutgers, that defenses are good coaching in the Big Ten is kind of coming up with ways to stop it. The evidence certainly isn't good. Power 5 opponents for this offense, 17 points, 13 points, 13 points, 13 points. Is this just a situation where we're looking at blocking, we're looking at losing 2 tackles, we're looking at losing 2 good receivers, or we have a really big problem with the offense?
Yeah, I think they've had some injuries. I think obviously losing Sutton and losing O'Neal this past week, they can't really mix and match. Like, this wasn't really a mix and match game for the offensive line. This was Brendan Bordner gets called for holding for the second time, so you bench him, and then you still have Vedral, it could have been disaster, that strip sack at the end. So I think I counted 19 pressures and like 9 hits or something between Snyder and Vedral out there on Saturday. It was rough day for the offensive line. No, and look, we're going to talk about the big plays Michigan State offense hit. Rutgers doesn't hit those plays. Right. They're just not talented enough to go down the field, have a 75-yard drive every time that ends in 7 points. They need, no Benjamin Coleman. They need those flyover yards. They do get them sometimes. Crookshank at the 75-yard touchdown catch and run against Ohio State, but they don't have enough of them. It's just, this is an offense that all the limitations that were there last year are still there. They just happen to have a couple of razzle-dazzle plays, and I think that, the Johnny Langan package, it seems like that's kind of over for the most part. I think we only saw it once on Saturday. So, yeah, I just think it's a little bit of the league catching up to them. I think it's a little bit of injuries. I think it's a little bit of the fact that, again, the personnel they had last year, when it was a lot of smoke and mirrors, is the same personnel they have this year. And I think that is also, it's a regression to the mean potentially.
Right. And I do think losing those 2 guys, losing Melton first off, and then Krushenk was having a great game. I mean, that catch he made on the first drive where he dragged his toe, and it was an NFL quality. I know he didn't get both feet down, but NFL quality reception. And then he was wide open on that last play, and it just missed. I thought he maybe slowed down a little bit. It was in the third quarter. If he catches that one and goes in for a score, well, the game's tied. It's a completely different game. So when Greg Schiano says that, this was a close game into the second half, he's right. That said, Sarge, it didn't feel like it. You know what I'm saying? It just didn't feel like a close game. I never really thought Rutgers was going to win this.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head with the Crookshank play where and Noah Vedral talked about like them being close, closer than a lot of people think. But that was a play where beautiful design, the double fake, and Vedral's really good at the play action fake. Crookshank was open. Fans have been talking about, well, you couldn't hit that deep pass, but all you could do as a quarterback in that situation, especially under pressure, which you got some pressure on it, is put the ball up there for the receiver to catch it. And just from the press box view, it looked like Crookshank did slow up, pull up a little bit on it. Those are the types of plays that you got to hit. And, if that happens, then the game's a lot closer than Rutgers has a chance going to the fourth quarter for sure.
All right, we're going to dive into a lot of this in detail, but I want to go right to true or false because we've got a lot of good ones. And we've got a lot of questions from Rutgers insiders too. So we've got a jam-packed show. Let's go to true or false, fellas. You know the rules. Let's do it. True or false? Rutgers is better off playing on the road right now. Cratch, true or false?
False.
Okay, Sarge?
False.
I'm going true. I'll explain why in a minute. True or false? Jalen Berger, Wisconsin running back, will end up at Rutgers. Sarge, true or false? Going to you first.
True.
All right. Cratch?
I'll say false for now.
Okay, I'm going to go false for now as well. True or false? Forget it. This season is done because the injury bug is real and unfixable. Cratch, true or false?
False.
Sarge?
False.
Yeah, I say false too. They can overcome this. True or false? It's time. Let's get Gavin Wimsatt into the damn game. Cratch, true or false?
False.
Oh, boy. Sarge?
False.
A couple of falses. I'm going to go true just to be the contrarian one. We'll go back to this one in a minute. True or false? Rutgers should commit to the youth movement in the second half of the season. Interesting. Cratch, true or false?
I'm going to say true, but I don't really think it's a youth movement. I think it's just the better players are going to start to play movement.
All right. Sarge?
True.
True. All right. I'll go false again, and I'll explain in a minute. True or false? You hinted at it. Hinted at it, Cratch. The Langan package is done. True or false?
I think true.
Sarge?
False.
I'm going false as well. All right. And finally, true or false? If Noah Vedral struggles in the first half against Northwestern, Cole Snyder should start the second half. Cratch, true or false?
True.
Sarge?
False.
Wow. All right, I'm going false as well. Let's go right to that one because it's it's the only thing fans want to talk about. I think right now is for the most part is Vedral. They're down on him again. He didn't have a great game. I think we all know. There were many things that were working against him in that game, namely the blocking, losing 2 receivers, and Michigan State's defense is pretty good. You had good numbers though, Cratch, in your film review, which of course was magical as usual. Cole Snyder is now 17 of 22, which is 77% in his mop-up duty with 153 yards and a touchdown in his career. Of course, this is all against third-teamers, but he looks like he's got a good arm, can move in the pocket. I mean, give me your case here. So if you what situation do you see, Cratch, where you're going to put Cole Snyder in that game?
So, I mean, here's the thing. Like, they've played 4 Power 5 opponents, and they've scored 17, 13, 13, 13. Like, it's not like this place is, and it's not all Noah Vedral's fault, but it's like, I go back to, I think Greg Schiano, I think last year made some point, like, quarterbacks get all the attention, but, like, they don't treat quarterback any differently than any other position as coaches. Well, look, obviously the backup quarterback is always going to be the most popular guy on campus. But every time the fan base sees Cole Snyder, and granted, it's been in a spring game, and 2 spring games. If you go back to his first spring game, he threw that beautiful long pass late in it when Ash was still here, and mop-up duty. But he looks good every time they see him. So I think that's adding to the fire of, okay, this offense really isn't performing well. Vedral's never been a guy who's going to wow you with his physical tools, and every time they see Cole Snyder, he looks pretty good. So I think at some point, yes. If you've lost 3 straight games, you have not scored more than 13 points against a Big Ten opponent, more than 17 against a Power 5 opponent, at some point you might have to see what the young man can do, just because every time you put him in a situation, he seems to rise to the occasion.
I'll agree with that, but I don't see it happening next week just because I just can't imagine a scenario where Northwestern is going to be up 21 points at halftime. I mean, and the other part of this is, and I go back to this because I guess I know I was the one banging the Free Rettig drum quite a bit, and I've been an advocate for backup quarterbacks in the past. Do we know Snyder's good? And I mean that sincerely. He was lightly recruited. I've seen him again. I think he's got a live arm. It certainly looks like it. I don't know that he's got a cannon. I have got no evidence he can read the defense the way I know Noah Vedral can. I know Noah Vedral has mastered this system, even if he can't make all the throws. And I've seen that Noah Vedral can throw the ball downfield and in certain situations. Sarge, you were a no on this. I mean, what do you think overall with Cole Snyder?
Yeah, I just think that it's a crucial game, and I don't think you can blame Noah Vedral for this past week's performance. And it's such a crucial game. I see no scenario in which that with your life on the line is probably we've talked about how crucial this is a winnable game. Northwestern might have 25,000 fans there. I think it was open up as a pick'em. So Rutgers being on the road, I mean, Rutgers has every opportunity to win this game, and I don't think they can be messing around with it with Wimsat or with a backup quarterback. I think you play your best players, and Noah Vedral has enough equity at this point that he's proven, at least in my eyes, that he should play.
Yeah, I guess that this game. Go ahead, Cratch. You can.
I don't think you go into the game thinking it, but I think you have. Well, here's the thing. I know you said what are the chances that Northwestern's going to be up 21-0. Here's the thing: Northwestern's not any good. They're coming off a bye. They run the ball well. They don't commit penalties. They're extremely well coached. This is not Mel Tucker, taking 17 delay of games and doing all of his strange thing. They are a well-coached football team that plays defense and runs the ball and is not going to make mistakes. So you know what? If Rutgers comes out the way it has been, it could be 21-0 at halftime, because Northwestern is not a team that's going to kill you if you let them.
All right, no, that's a good point. I just will say, I just think we don't have a lot of evidence about Snyder. I will say that, that's the one. And,
I would say we don't have a lot of evidence, but I've only been on the beat for 4 years, but like, if you think about Art, Jonathan Lewis, Flacco, Simon, all the quarterbacks, Cole Snyder is the one guy who has actually looked decent every time we've seen him. And I think that has to, like, I get it. I'm sure there's many reasons why Vedral is the starter, obviously. But at some point, like, if the guy keeps on playing well when you give him little spurts here and there, at some point, it's natural to want to see him in front of a first-team defense.
I will say this, too. It's a fair question, and we'll bring it up this week when we have an opportunity to talk to Graciano. But Sean Gleason, and we wrote about this last year, dating back to Princeton a little bit last year, he was a master at utilizing all the quarterbacks on his roster, all the quarterbacks capable of playing on the roster. At Princeton, he played multiple quarterbacks, not just Johnny Langan type package type stuff, but he played his backup quarterbacks. Has not this season, so maybe there's an opportunity to do that. I've never been an advocate, but if it's close and you want to give more of a glimpse of Cole Snyder to see if he could do it against first team defense, then this would probably be the opportunity.
I will say this, and to another true or false point about the Johnny Langan package. I don't think it's dead for this exact reason. Sorry, you mentioned it. I mean, that they will use multiple quarterbacks, and this is Northwestern is a bad defense against the run. This could be a situation where they send him out there like they did against Purdue, and all of a sudden he can have a kind of 10-play 7-minute drive where they score a touchdown. I mean, don't you think there is a scenario where Johnny Langan's not just coming into the game for a third down, but they might use him the way they did last year?
I go back to the Purdue game last year. That's a great comparison. Like, can Sean Gleason deliver that game plan? Does he have the personnel to do it? I mean, that was, if you go back to that Purdue game, that was a work of art from an offensive scheme and in-game adjustment standpoint. So, this is a week, where he's going to have to, throw, everything at it and be able to be as, creative as possible.
Cratch, do you think they figured out Gleason, or is it personnel?
I think it's personnel. I mean, I think, look, Sean Gleason's a really good offensive coordinator. I think he does, for me, like 2 to 3 things a game that you're kind of like, why did they do that? Or like you think, hey, Greg probably should be on the headset like, hey, we're not doing that, Sean. But no, I think he's a good offensive coordinator. I think he's doing the best with what he has. Right now, he doesn't have the horses. They're going to have the horses in a year or two. They think they've got the biggest horse of them all, in the stable getting ready to play, in the future. So, yeah, I think that, I agree with Sarge. I think Johnny Langan's going to play. I just think that we've maybe gotten to the point where he is more of a tight end than anything. So we're going to see his snaps with the football, his rushes limited. But no, I just think that game plan like they used against Purdue last year, I just don't think that's going to ever happen again. I think it was a once-in-a-lifetime situation because it quickly became so predictable from that point forward.
All right, so I want to make my point about the road game thing, and I think the evidence is on my side. They won 3 Big Ten road games last year. I get it, COVID, no fans, it's different, but their 2 best games of the year, arguably, Syracuse and at Michigan. So I don't know, and I wonder about, like, is there a scenario? And I don't want to kill the fans. I get it that I'm going to hear 100 different excuses why the noon game ticket takers we count. I'm going to hear that a million things if I kill. I get it. The fans are never going to be in the building on time. So I've just given up on that. I do wonder though, when they run out that tunnel, you got Michigan State 11th in the country, and there are 12,000 people in the building 10 minutes before kickoff, if that impacts them. I don't know. Do you think there's some psychological, people, what do you think?
Yeah, so we've been to Michigan. I mean, I just couldn't, or Penn State last year. We've seen these atmospheres where fans have just are in their seats, and the energy in the building at kickoff is absolutely incredible, folks. There's a reason why we harp on this is because we've seen the other side of it. It's unbelievable. I will say this. So I'm not even sure at this point it's a tailgating issue. I think it might be twofold. I think they're clearly giving away a ton of tickets. Okay. And when you give away tickets, the average, fan receiving those tickets isn't really a diehard fan. So maybe they get the tickets last minute. They're free. They go on Google Maps or Waze the night before and like, oh, okay, SHI Stadium is, a 20-minute drive. I'll leave at 11:30, and then all of a sudden, holy crap, there's traffic. And then they had to get parked over at the rack rather than at the stadium, where Waze the night before tells you that you're going to be able to park. So all of a sudden, you have to take a shuttle from the rack over to the stadium, and it's not just a tailgating issue. So if they had 41,000 tickets distributed, and they gave away a good portion to fans just to try to fill in as much as they could, a lot of those fans weren't just tailgating; they were arriving late, because of traffic issues and just because of the being naive to how to actually attend a college football game.
I think it's more than that, though, too. I think there are 8,000 really good Rutgers fans who recognize the importance of getting in the stadium on time, and I think there are 20,000 Rutgers fans who don't give a crap about it. I mean, it's really simple. If you wanted to get into the building on time for the kickoff, you would get into the building on time for the kickoff. They don't want to do it. You can't make them. You can't guilt them about it. You can't tweet them into the building. You just can't do it. I mean, they just don't. Cratch, am I wrong? They don't care.
Well, let me. I want to hear Cratch's point, but there's a reason why they just upgraded and did everything they did inside the tunnel with the light show, and it's because Greg Schiano has become abundantly aware that the players are going to come out of the tunnel and they're going to see the amount of silver and empty seats throughout the stadium, and he's going to manufacture a game day environment and try to get his team hyped up any way he can. If that means putting club music and lights inside the tunnel, he's going to do it. But it's an issue that has certainly sunk in with the team. Go ahead, Cratch. I'm sorry.
I agree with all the points made. I think that I just want to clarify that I was wrong last week. They do open the stadium, I believe, 2 hours before kickoff. I just want to throw that out there. Look, I think they should just have Steve Peichel give out more TVs. Like,
there you go. If everyone got a TV.
Yeah, everyone gets a TV, I mean, look.
Everybody. Give out 53,000 TVs.
53,000 TVs. I mean, I think some of it's just, like, this is America in 2021. Like, people don't really want to, people don't, like – I think at the point, like, not having every seat in the house filled is not a big deal anymore. And I think Sarge is right. Like, or you guys are right. Like, whoever makes the point, people just don't care. Like, they just don't care. I mean, this is like a 100-year thing. This is not it's not ticket scanners. It's a combination of ticket scanners and apathy and traffic. I mean, I turned onto River Road off of 287 South, exit 9 on Saturday, and it was like bumper to bumper. I was like, wow, there must be a ton of people here. We got like 3/4 mile down the road, and it opened up. It was like, I was like when I drive to the press conference later today, and I have no idea why. It was just some strange, like, there's a lot of annoying things that come with going to a Rutgers game day, and I think people realize that. But, all the tailgating lots on Busch campus are well within walking distance of the stadium. That's not an issue. People just don't care, and that's okay.
Right. And when we say that again, there are 3,000 fans that do.
Go.
Right. There are 3,000 fans
and those
that really
people are
do.
wonderful. I also think that it's also like a generational thing. Like, if the student section, they've been strong at every game. Those kids who are freshmen, who are in a student section, if the team keeps winning, by the time they're seniors, they're contending for the Big Ten East, they're going to be more fired up as alumni to come back. And then I think that's going to grow and grow and grow until you get to the point where maybe, 10 years from now, there's 13,000 people that want to be in their seats at kickoff. And then 10 years after that, we've got 26,000.
This sounds like a Chris Ash, 7-year plan.
Hey. No, I mean, like,
7 years.
3, 4, 5, 13
I mean, here's the thing, too. Here's the thing, too. We can't get Giants and Jets fans in the MetLife Stadium before there's 6 minutes left in the gone through by in the first quarter. I think this is just the way the world works these days. People like tailgating.
It doesn't work in State College this way. It
does not work at Michigan
this way.
State College this way.
I mean, nothing works at Michigan. I mean, Michigan, like, they have 110,000 people go to a place, and I feel like I'm walking down Main Street in Chester, New Jersey, with my ease of access.
I don't understand it. I know. How does it work? You're absolutely right. All right. Well, that was fun. The one last thing I wanted to revisit, because, Kratz, you think that there's going to be a youth movement. The only reason why I'm saying I'm disagreeing with this, unless, of course, they lose to Northwestern and then it starts going in the opposite direction There's no reason not to. But I do think that Greg Schiano will reward these players who have stuck it out. He's not going to bench, the Tyshawn Fogg or an 03, certainly, because he's the best player in the defense. But you know what I'm talking about. I think that he sees a cultural thing. If you're going to stay, if you're going to commit to the program as a 5th, 6th, 8th year senior, whatever it is now, he's going to commit to you. You disagree with that?
I don't disagree with that, but I also think at the same time, too, like, if you've got a linebacker who can't get off a block, or you got a linebacker who can't get across the field and there's a 95-yard touchdown run the other way, like at some point, you're going to have.
Hey, Rutgers Rant listeners, it's Steve Politi from NJ Advanced Media. We appreciate you supporting this podcast and the sponsors who help us continue doing it. This week's podcast is brought to you by the New Brunswick Development Corporation. If you listen to this show, you love Rutgers. And if you love Rutgers, you know the positive impact that DevCo has made on the campus and its community. We thank the New Brunswick Development Corporation for its continued support and for helping make this podcast possible. Now back to the show.
Adjust to that. Real quick, I don't think Wimsat. Here's my thing. If counting this week, I figure if you're going to play Wimsat, I don't think they're necessarily going to play him at all this year. You don't worry about playing him until Wisconsin week. At that point, you would have 4 more weeks of practice. You got Wisconsin week, Illinois week, Northwestern week, and the open week. I think at that point, once we could maybe see him potentially get his feet wet in the final 4 games, but I don't think he's ready to play now, certainly.
I think we will see him, but Sarge, you don't think we will see him at this point?
No, I do. I think we'll see him. I think he's going to play at some point. The Wisconsin week now, I've become sold on what Cratch said. I think we will see him at some point. It's just I don't think I can't really talk about what I've seen in practice because we would be banned from practice going forward. But I have not. I just don't know if he's ready yet.
All right, good stuff, guys. Fun debate. Let's go to our Rutgers Insider questions. As always, thank you for subscribing to our service. We've had a fun time we're back to part-time therapists now with a lot of you guys, and hopefully talking through your anger helps. All right, I asked them, so this week I asked the Rutgers Insiders, if you're going to bench Vedral, make a case and tell me why you think specifically the other quarterbacks are worth it. And I got a lot of really good answers. I can't get to them all. One from Mark who makes the point, and this is what he says specifically. Snyder throws the ball much better. He is taller and can see over both his line and the defensive line. He is apparently able to run the ball. He knows how to step into the pocket, not away from it, and he seems to be able to avoid sacks much better than Noah. It's unclear if he has as much a grasp of the offense, but it'd be a good time to find out, especially if Noah gets hurt again. We can't play like this forever. It's a pretty good answer. I mean, Craig, this is kind of how you feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Noah's obviously the starter, and until he, as long as he's healthy. But I think at some point, you probably need to sprinkle Cole Snyder in there a little bit, and it may be as simple as there's a blowout. You yank Noah like one series earlier than you would necessarily would have, just to see what happens. Because as I said, the kid looks like he's got everything going every time we see him, so right. It's natural to want to see him against the real thing.
One more answer on that question was a good one. Vedral is a tough kid, but holds the ball too long and is not accurate. Throwing late into a crowd and missing open receivers has killed us for 2 years. He was the safe choice until he started turning the ball over. I'm gonna disagree with this one, Sarge, just because I don't know that there are many the receivers don't get open as often as other programs. There's still a separation issue. There's still a certain time throwing the ball. I mean, it looks like he's holding the ball too long, but there are plenty of times when the pass rush is just there right away, right?
Absolutely. You go back and look. Cratch has it in his film review. I think he was, running for his life on 17, plays. How many times did he drop back? I mean, just, he's running for his life on the majority of those plays. Those take a toll, and it's hard to be as accurate. We've seen when Noah has time, he's the most accurate quarterback they've had since probably Gary Nova his senior year.
All right, as much as the fans want to bench Noah Vedral, they also seem to be ready for a change at running back from Alex and Marlboro. The coaching staff and the majority of fan base believes Pacheco is the best player at the position, but for some reason the offense moves better with Aaron Young and Kyle Monangai in the game? Will we see a workload decrease soon for Pop? Interesting point. I mean, I guess I go back to, the same, just a high level of defenses they're facing. I'd be interested to see how he does against a weak, if they give him the ball 25 times, Scratch, against a weak Northwestern defense, is he going to have 150 yards?
He could. I think that's the thing. Like, the thing about Isaiah Pacheco is, like, every time, like, you're kind of like out on him, he shows up and he has like a 100-yard game. And he's critical to a winning effort. So, yeah, I don't think they're going to move on from him. I think that he is their guy. But I certainly get what the fans are saying. And again, like, it worked a little bit, I think, against Michigan. But those looping sweeps where he's bouncing to the outside, it just doesn't work.
You love those sweets. What was the line? What did you call them in your film review this week? What was like the inevitable, the obligatory? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I get what they're trying to do, and really get what they're trying to do is the offensive line on Saturday. Holy Toledo. I mean, that was bad. But yeah, it's just like, it's just not going to work. It's just like, it's a square peg round hole situation. Like, he is not a running back who's meant to go do that. He's not going to get to the edge quick enough to turn it up.
I do think, and that we've spent probably 15 minutes of this podcast talking about Noah Vedral and replacing him, but Crash touched on it, and I watched it firsthand. He obviously analyzed a lot better with the film review, but like the offensive line was really bad. Like almost, it was bad. It was as bad as I've seen, in one single game. In at least 4 or 5 years, which is saying something. So, the running game we could talk about Pacheco, and I just don't think that they have a whole lot of opportunities from run game, and I think from the folks, quarterbacking is hard when you don't have time, and I think we could talk about Noah Vedral ad nauseum, and I think maybe we do give Snyder an opportunity. Maybe, I mean, the line's not going to change. If the line's not going to change, maybe you have to see what another quarterback can do behind a porous line. But to blame Noah Vedral for all the issues at quarterback, I think is unfair.
No, and to piggyback off that, like the designed runs with Vedral, they worked really well. Like,
they worked well in this game. They had one good design run, but it seemed like the Michigan State figured it out.
Well, they had a couple of decent runs. I really think that's something that they could work on. I really think more of a zone read game. Now, granted, they have to read the zone read well. Could help this offense, but that gets you in a position of, if Noah's continually running the ball, he took a lot of licks on Saturday. He's going to get hurt, which I think is the fear they have and why they can't go all in on that.
Right. Yeah,
but I do think that's something that would help the offense.
Yeah, it's the same thing with the Giants. Daniel Jones, it's going to happen. And it did happen. So I don't know how hindered. Let's go right here before we forget. And I did forget. We think, could this be a cat and mouse game? Is the chance that Vedral is more hurt than running on, number one? And number two, either one you take this, which of these injured players you think are most likely that we're going to see this week? And which ones are we not going to see?
It could be a cat and mouse game. I don't think so. I mean, I don't think Noah's not a guy who, like, he was pretty convincing. I don't think he would just bald-faced lie to us, and I don't think Rutgers would make him available in that situation, even if they want to play a cat and mouse game. Raekwon O'Neal dressed on Saturday, which kind of took me by surprise. I would not be surprised if he's back this week. Melton, it's kind of using a sling on Saturday. It's kind of hard. Crookshank, to me, is a total mystery because Shiana said after the game it was a shoulder injury. I watched the game. I could not tell where he hurt his shoulder. He got hit hard earlier in the game, but he stayed in the game. He seemed like he was moving fine. Even when he dove for that pass and then got up and immediately was waving, like, take me off, he didn't seem to wince or anything. So I don't really know. Like, that's the one I have no clue about.
How about Izzian?
We didn't get update on Izzian on Saturday. Tough. I mean, it clearly was a lower body injury, but I don't know if that's a situation that he might be back or not. I mean, Greg kind of said in the press conference he got banged up, so I don't know if he didn't seem to be as ominous, for want of a better term, discussing Izzian briefly than he was Crookshank. So we'll see.
All right, so let's dive into the next question here about the defense. Sarge, why don't you take this one? With so many starters returning on defense, I thought this unit was going to be better, possibly the best linebacker core in the Big Ten coming into the season. I guess I get that not having Melton is a blow, but we have multi-year starters, Izzy and Avery and Young. And then we're bolstered by Patrice Rene. I just don't get it. What is the problem with the defense?
Speed. That's it. Speed. I mean, they're just not, Greg Schiano in his first tenure, it's kind of funny. Like, it took him a couple of years to actually get the type of speed athletes that he wanted. What he did really, a key later in his tenure was moving players down a level. So he would take a Kasim Green from safety and move him down to linebacker. I'll be interested to see him do that more and more. I mean, Powell played a lot more at linebacker. I could see him getting more opportunities. I could really see Greg Schiano, if you're going to see some changes, I think maybe even if he doesn't bench a Tyshawn Fogg, but I could see him playing more linebackers to get more speed onto the field, because that's the biggest issue right now. We saw in Ohio State. We certainly saw it, with Naylor, running down the field, and then chasing after Walker, running back. They don't have the speed on defense. That is it's certainly in the back seven of the defense. They are lacking in speed.
Cratch, when you watch this game again, do you get the sense that it was the secondary issues were just really good receiver from Michigan State, a couple mental?
Yeah.
Guys, I mean,
I think it was just, like Greg Schiano said, the eye discipline kind of lacked. And then I think that, there wasn't much of a pass rush, and just, some really good receivers hit some double moves. And, if you make one little mistake at that level covering a guy, you're toast. I think we saw that.
All right. And we got to wrap up, two kind of wacky questions. I like the wacky questions. Rocco from Sebring wants to know, why do coaches call a 30-second timeout? Do they get anything exchanged for calling a 30-second timeout versus a full 60-second timeout? I've never heard this question before, Chris. You're a student of football here. What is Rocco asking?
I know exactly what he's talking about. Like, a referee will say, like, a full timeout, a 30-second timeout. Rocco, I'm going to be honest, you got me stumped. Like, I just have always assumed that it's sort of like the NBA, where it's like maybe you get like 2 full timeouts and 1 30-second timeout, or 1 full and 2 30s. I don't really know. I actually thought the same thing the other night driving home. I think I was listening to the Giants game on the radio last night, and I think the Giants, someone called a timeout, and they said it's a 30-second timeout. And I thought to myself, I've never really dug into the rule book to figure out like what the timing rules for timeouts are.
Well, there you go. We don't know either, Rocco. How's that for an answer? All right, and this is a good one. This is a good one, Sarge. Just curious, who's the guy in the Rutgers sidelines who shadows Schiano every move Schiano makes? Is he a coach, security? What is his role? I think is he the headset guy? Sarge, I mean, what is this?
Well, I mean, there's a few people, but Schiano has a guy who shadows them to make sure that the headsets aren't getting tangled, and that he's basically helping him out with anything he needs. Like he has that practice as well. So at some point, Politi, you'll get to the point in your writing career where you have someone who can shadow you and transcribe notes for you and ask questions. Nice? And at some point, you'll get to that level, Steve, and you just haven't reached it. But
I've been grooming Brian Fonseca for that role for 5 years. He just doesn't seem He doesn't seem like he wants it as much as I'd like him to take.
By the way, Cratch has already reached that level because I'm the guy who actually shadows Cratch and helps him out.
Right. There you go. Yeah, when you watch your round to answer that question, though, when you're around Rutgers enough, you'll notice that Greg Schiano's got a lot of guys. There's just a lot of people around who do different jobs. I mean, it is a small army of people who have different responsibilities that, some very clear, some a little less so. You're not sure what some people are doing. It's interesting, put it that way. I think we've hinted at it, guys. This is a huge game. You win this, you're 4-3 at the bye. You can heal up, and then suddenly, winning 2 more to get the bowl or having a strong finish doesn't look so bad. You lose this one, you're 3-4. It is hard to find a scenario where you're going to win 3 more games and get to a bowl game. Cratch, what do we know about Northwestern? Are they as bad as they look?
They're pretty bad. But as we mentioned earlier, like, they do some things well. They don't commit penalties. They do run the ball well. They've got some areas where they're good. They're disciplined. So it's not an easy team to play. They're well coached. And Ryan, it's 11 a.m. local time kickoff, sleepy environment. I don't think it's the layup that maybe some people think it is.
All right. Well, let's dive in. Pick 'em. Oh, Sarge, you were surprised about the pick 'em?
A little bit. But yeah, if you're asking prediction time, I think Rutgers is going to win. I think they're going to win. I'm going to go another rock fight. I can't see, I think Rutgers is going to have to, control the tempo and be able to, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of points. So I'll go 23-20 for Rutgers.
All right. 23-20 Rutgers win. Kratch, you picked Rutgers to win last week. That did not happen.
Pick 'em. I was disappointed to see a pick 'em. I was kind of hoping we'd have a line so we could play the line game a little bit. I think Rutgers is going to win, but I think it's going to be like a hideous game, like 15-13 or something. Like it's just going to be a total ugly debacle. I do think Rutgers will win, but it's going to be a bad sight for anyone who happens to show up to Ryan Field.
This would be easier to pick if we knew. It's just hard to pick when you don't know the injuries this early in the week. If we knew Melton and Cruikshank were going to play, it'd be kind of an easy pick. I was the one who got not to pat myself on the back, the one who got the Michigan State game right. So now I've got a chance to really put the pedal to the floor here in the standings. But I'm going to go the same direction you guys. I think Rutgers is going to win this one. I think it's going to be relatively easy, maybe like the game we finally see the offense break out a little bit, like a 30-20 type game. And that means a good running attack. That means we'll silence the Noah Vetral drumbeat for a little while. I think they're just due for a good game. And then this is the perfect time to have one. All right. What else we got?
I say Sarge went to Indianapolis again. Big Ten basketball media days.
Oh, that's right. How was that? You didn't go to St. Elmo's. This is
I did not. It was the first. I was hoping to go 6 for 6 in my home away from home Indianapolis, but I did not make it to St. Elmo's. And I think my. Eating St. Elmo's. I flew in on Friday night, late, and I wasn't going to eat at 10 o'clock at night. And then, Saturday I worked, and it just wasn't really an opportunity. But to talk, the business of what happened, obviously, Steve Peichel and every time I talked to him, I spent probably a good 20 minutes, talking to him after his podium. And then another probably 15 minutes during the breakout session. So spent a lot of time with him and Geo Baker and Ron Harper. Every time and Kellen McConnell, every time I talk to Peichel, I come away even more optimistic, really, because Peichel exudes optimism regarding this team. He really is high on this team, folks. I mean, he, to a point where he thinks it's going to be the best team that he's coached, and he thinks, that he's not making any bold predictions, but I think based on the way he feels, I think they have every opportunity to get back to the NCAA tournament. The message that he told his team in the first practice was, national championship. That tells you. And as I joked with him, I said, there hasn't been really a coach in the last 45 years who's mentioned that, and actually people took him seriously. But the players, what was their reaction? And basically, he said that they all believe it. The other big news, obviously, was see Vivian Stringer not being around the women's basketball team. We reported about it before, I even got to Indianapolis. She has not really been with the team since April. And it really stems from her fear of catching COVID. You have to remember, she's a 73-year-old woman who has a daughter who's 40 years old, who has spinal meningitis, has been dealing with that since she was 2. So Vivian Stringer has a lot of reasons not to want to get sick, and I was not aware of this until I started reporting the story. But Rutgers is not really testing now. So, there is a mandate that, all students on the campus have to be vaccinated. So, the assumption, even though I can't prove it, is that the players on the team have been vaccinated. That doesn't mean that people can't get it. As we know, the Delta variant is highly contagious. So, I mean, Vivian Stringer has a lot of reasons not to be fearful of it. And so she's not coaching. There's no timetable on when she will be coaching. Timothy Eatman, who by all accounts, you talking to the players, has done a really good job, steadying the ship. Basically says that she's day to day.
Rich, Sarge, I will say this, and I understand everything you just said there, but she signed a 5-year contract extension in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, was this not discussed? I just don't. Eventually, you have to do your job on some level. This is not like, an administrative leave for. She's the high profile face of a what's supposed to be an NCAA tournament basket. How long is this sustainable? I mean, I just don't get how this can go on. Really.
Well, it's a fair question, but two things. Right now, Rutgers officials have said that she's basically taking her sick time, which is her right. And again, it's a fair question. She signed it. The Board of Governors meeting, I think, was April 14th. I reported it, and and everyone, it's been since April is when she basically was around the team last. She was
coaching the team. It was worse in March when she was coaching the team.
So two more. She cannot. I asked Timothy Eatman whether or not she can monitor practice because she had meetings with players like she probably did last year early on during the pandemic, Zoom meetings and whatnot. She can't even do that because of the NCAA rules. You can only have 4 coaches. So basically they've had to elevate, one of their operations people to be an assistant coach. So Rutgers would be breaking a rule for Vivian Stringer to be doing any instruction right now. So look, it's a fair question with regards to the contract. And as one person told me, again, Timothy Eatman saying that she's day to day, but to think that it's going the pandemic. I know numbers are decreasing, but we're talking about an indoor sport in which you're going to have fans, 1,500 fans, in the building. To think that it's going to be any better this winter, it's probably naive.
Yeah, I don't want to say this, Cratch, but if this is the case, if she's not going to coach the team, she should retire. And I hate to say it, but this is the situation. This is the situation that you're faced with. You've got to live a job. The players are all vaccinated, so at this point, you should be able to coach practice. You're vaccinated. You can get a booster. Do you disagree with that, Cratch?
No, I mean, look, the one thing, my big takeaway too is that I really think Rutgers should have been more transparent about this if it's really been months, because there's nothing, as Sarge said, all the reasons, it's perfectly valid reasons why she should want to take care of herself and her family. So one, I don't understand why we're not upfront about it. Two, I think that you can say day to day, but you need to be concerned about your student athletes and what's fair to them. And if the situation is she's going to not coach this season because of this, and reevaluate, once we hopefully get really finally past this thing entirely this coming spring, okay, great. But clear the deck. Let Tim Eatman be the head coach of the program. Let the players know who their head coach is going to be, who's running the team, and move forward. Because here's the thing. This is a team that's been very competitive in the Big Ten the past few years, and they just revamped the program entirely with the transfer portal. They've got a lot of veteran players who have starred at mid-major programs who are getting their shot in the Big Ten now. I just think you need to be fair to them and have them know what the situation is going to be, because it gets really strange. I mean, what happens if they're in January and they're tied for first place in the Big Ten? Does Vivian suddenly say, okay, I'm ready to go and show up? I mean, if they struggle out of the gate, is she less inclined to come back and coach? I mean, it's just very messy to me. So I just think Rutgers has to. It's totally valid. She has every right to do it. It's completely understandable. It's a very serious situation, but they should have a solid plan moving forward by the time the ball is tipped off.
One more, which is, Cratch is going to love, is I still have not gotten an answer, and he might know this better, but if Tim Eatman serves as the acting head coach again, you're going into the season, every win and loss, goes on Vivian Stringer's record. So this is a coach who's 5th all time, in wins, 1,055. So every one of those wins, that they can presumably get, she could be,
amazing.
She's going to get the salary, the $1 million salary, the victories. It would be I mean, that's something. I wouldn't go back to work either. That's pretty impressive. I'm joking about the last part. I don't want to. I don't want to. She's a Hall of Fame coach. She's a wonderful leader for the program. It is really just a unprecedented situation, and I'm just not sure if it goes into the season how sustainable it is. I agree with you, Cratch, totally. All right. Anything else we got to touch on here before we sign off for the week? No,
I think
field hockey won, women's soccer won.
Pretty good.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. We will be back. I'm sure we'll be back right because of the bye week. And Sarge and I have a little bit of time off coming, but we'll be back before the next game to recap what's happening and to preview the final 5 games of the season. So thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant. To participate in the conversation and receive live updates about the Scarlet Knights directly to your phone, sign up at NJ.com/insider.
You haven't heard enough from me yet, huh? Steve Politi here for one last thank you to this episode's sponsor, New Brunswick Development Corporation, and to listeners like you who make it all the way to the end of the show. We'll see you again soon.